Maxi Mateva to everyone. It's we're learning the Kuntris, the Maimer Hechaltzu 5659, 1899 from the Rashab. And it's appropriate that we're learning it this week because it's Aseres Yemei Tshuva, and there's no better way to do Tshuva than to have Avas Yisrael. And this mimer is all about not only Avas Yisrael, love for another Jew, but Achdus Yisrael, complete unity, where we aren't two that become one, we're to begin with all one. This is a concept that the Alter Rebbe initiated in chapter 32 in Tanya, what I just told you. And it has its roots in Chazal, of course, not only in Kabbalah, but also in Gemara and elsewhere, etc., in Medrash. And it's a very important one. The standard example given is like we're all limbs of one body. So it's not a separation, it's one body. A body needs to have limbs. When you talk about regular Avos Yisrael, v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha, there's reacha and there's kamoicha. There's two things. And v'yohavta, you shall love reacha, your friend, the other, like yourself. That's two that remain two. It's the two that there are should have Avos Yisrael. There's something greater and deeper. The Achdus is a lot deeper. That the love is so great, there isn't two, there's only one. But there's one that splits itself into two. It's a very, very different perspective. And ultimately, this is what the Rashab is calling for in this Maimer of Hechaltzu. When you look at others as others, then there are issues. And sometimes you work them out, sometimes you don't, and many times you become very discouraged and very upset and to the point of hate, as he says over here. But if to begin with you understand that Av Echad L'Kolona, it's a quote in Tanya chapter 32, we have all one Father and we are Echad L'Kolona, we are part of that one Father, then our perspective of differences and disagreements doesn't lead to hatred, it leads to a respectful disagreement. The Chachamim, in the sages in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, are always disagreeing with each other. And yet they were best friends, kind of. Of course, barring the event of Lag Ba'omer, the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, which unfortunately they got punished when they died. You see that they were wrong. You see clearly that act of the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, as justified as it could be, that each one was coming from their perspective, that their Rebbe wants only kindness, or their Rebbe wants only strictness, like Issa said before, that the Rebbe told him, the same Torah that supports Chumrah supports Kulas, right? But if you don't see it that way, you get very animated with your shita and your approach, and everyone else is junk and garbage, and I don't like you, right? And I throw you out. And that what did that lead to? Rahman litzlan, a magefa, a plague. Pashut kipshutai. And there's no, take the facts on the ground as it's recorded in the Medrash and the Gemara, and we celebrate it till today. 2,000 years later, we're celebrating one of the reasons for Lag Ba'omer is because the magefa stopped. The Talmidei Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. So that's not Kabbalah, it's not Chassidus, and it's not Musar, it's a Gemara. So every Litvak and everyone who just only follows the Gemara, that's the Gemara. So what's the point? That the Achdus Yisrael needs to be from the Av Echad Kulona perspective. You can have your derech, you can have your shita, no problem. There's room for everything. But as long as you understand that there's room for the other way too. And that's what Israel was contacted me about. I spoke about the Erev controversy in Crown Heights, and I wasn't taking sides, because who am I to take sides? I'm not a Bucky native, that you have to be a Bucky in the halachas. But just the general idea of people getting so worked up and not giving a platform for another shita, even if that platform is that it's against our way we paskin in our community. Therefore, it might be a good Erev, but it doesn't belong here. I can understand that. But give them, call them into your office, have a discussion, record it, and then it's menschlach. So this is what the Rebbe Rashab wants here. They're Hasidim in this shtetl and that shtetl, and then they're fighting about, this nusach and that nusach, and this kvetch and that kvetch, and this minig and that minig, and should we say l'chaim? Should we not say l'chaim? Why should we say l'chaim? And everyone is, and then when it comes to drinking from a cup, barring, it's not a health issue, okay? And there's no other cup. No, I don't want to drink from your cup. You are such a lowlife. I'm not going to drink from your cup. In other words, he didn't drink from the other chassid's cup, not because of concern of health, which I can hear. That wasn't the issue. It's that whose cup is it? It's your cup. And from you, I'm not going to drink. Understand? That's the issue. And many times we disguise the real truth, why something bothers us, with medical reasons and health reasons and this reasons, and it's all baloney times 5. It's Bubba Mises. You just don't like the guy. You don't like him. And you don't like him, you don't want to be around him, and you don't have anything to do with him, you don't want to drink from his cup. That's what the Rashab is intimating underneath these words and lines that he presents here in the Maimer. That's what he's getting at. And it's so interesting to me that on Simchas Torah, I think I said this, but it's worth repeating. On Simchas Torah, such a holy day, every hour Simchas Torah is gems. The Rebbe Rashab, the same Rebbe said, the 48 hours of Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, one can gather pails of brachas. 48 hours. Every dance, every clap, every smile, every minute of Simchas Torah is loaded with gems, with kedusha, with spirituality, Torah, etc. And on this very day, he takes time, and this is a very long mimer. It must have taken him probably 2 hours to say it. Okay, he takes 2 hours to say a mimer chasidus, which he said many times, very long maimorim. As you will look in his maimorim, you'll see. But here he spends so much of it on this kind of very practical musar. It's so out of style for a Chabad maimer. You guys know, you've been learning maimorim for years. And for some it's so hard to get into Chabad Chassidus because it's so esoteric and so philosophical. And what Atzilus Bria? Where's Atzilus? Gotta tell you something someone wrote to me, and I put it into one of the books I'm working on. So this was in 1941 or 42, in 770. So there were 2 classes, the older boys and the younger boys. Younger boys were 10, 11, 12 years old. The older ones 12, 13. And the rabbi, the teacher, was someone who was sent in August of 39, with 5 other Bocharim to study in the Frierdiker Rebbe's yeshiva in Otwock, Poland, which is south over there, 20 minutes outside of Warsaw. His name was Rabbi Kolodny, and he was a substitute. When I was in yeshiva, in Lubavitch yeshiva, he was a substitute. So I personally knew him and learned from him. Anyway, he was the Rebbe of this Kita, okay? The war broke out. Yes.
That's what I was going to ask. You said August of 39, and I thought...
Yeah. They were there 2 weeks. And they turned around, and miraculously, they got home, okay? The whole journey has been recorded. It was a great miracle, but they all made it back. Yeah, so they were there 2 weeks, and and the war broke out. Anyway, So he was the Rebbe of this Kita. Rabbi Groner, the Rebbe secretary, Rabbi Label Groner, was in this Kita, was in this class. Rabbi Zalman Posner of Nashville, Tennessee, the rabbi of the OU shul over there, the Chabad rabbi in that shul, and others were boys. They were the boys in the class. Rabbi Garari, the previous Rebbe's older brother-in-law, the Rebbe, son-in-law, Rabbi Shmaryo Garari, he was in charge of the yeshivas. So he comes in to this class with Rabbi Shmuel Levittin. He was an elder chassid. He was born in 1883. He was even older than Garari. And they came into the classroom, and he hears the way Rabbi Kolodny is teaching, or, Hasidus, an idea of Hasidus. I don't know if it was a text. I don't think so. To these boys. These were American boys, and their parents, some of them were Chassidim, most were not Chassidim. And even if they were Chassidim, but it was a different, no one was teaching 10, 11-year-old boys Chassidus in those days. If you saw your father go to a Rebbe and he schlepped you along, you would ask, where am I going? I'm going to the Rebbe. What's a Rebbe? And your father would tell you a few words. You know what I'm saying? But it was a new concept in America. Very new, very new. Even though there was a few Rebbes here, there, but it wasn't a mainstay of Judaism in Orthodox world in New York and America at the time. Anyway, so they come into the classroom and they hear the way Rabbi Kolodny is teaching them some Hasidus in English. Now, they learned in Yiddish. The language they learned, the Gemara and the Chumash, was in Yiddish. For whatever reason, I guess it was easier for him to explain some basic ideas and Hasidus to these boys in English. And Rabbi Garari, was taken aback. He knows that in the newly founded Lubavitch Yeshiva in 1941, it was founded in 1940, so this is 41, 42, he assumed there would be, just like the Gemara and the Chumash is in Yiddish, Hasidus would be in Yiddish. And here he's speaking to them in English. So he says to Rabbi Kolodny, how would you translate Atzilus into English? And he made that comment as a jab, in other words, get over it. Talk the language of Yiddish and so
how would you translate Atzilus into Yiddish?
Wait, you got it. So Reb Shmuel Levittin, you're as smart as Reb Shmuel, was right there with him, and he was a very sharp chassid. He immediately said that to Rabbi Garari. He said, Rabbi Garari, and how would you translate Atzilus into Yiddish? And that was the end of it. But so I just mentioned how the Rashab would say Maimorim about Atzilus and this and that, flying in the heavens and Yeshmiyayin and the Leviolol and creation, right? And in this Maimor, a large part of it, or maybe most of it, is Avodah, and not only Avodah, it's like Musar in a sense. It's like psychology and Musar, very down to earth. And when does he say it? On Simchas Torah, on the holiest day, one of the holiest days of the year, taking away hours of time from dancing and saying l'chaim and whatever else, right? Because it's so important. It's like what you said before, Isser, about the kulas. This message, this is living Chassidus. This is not learning Chassidus. This is living Chassidus. You can learn Chassidus and know so much Torah, so much Chassidus, but you don't live it. This is living Chassidus. So this is what we're getting at over here. Let's go now to chapter 11. Page, right? Issa, we're on chapter 11. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just want to throw in another comment from my Rebbe.
Yes.
It says Chassidus is a verb.
Chassidus is a verb. Good. But you got to be careful when you say that. You have to be careful because some take it today like, there is no significance. And that's not true. There is a lot of significance, but the way it's been applied today it's lost some at times. It's lost its authenticity of being Hasidus. So yeah, it becomes a verb. It becomes a verb, but it's a big noun. I think you guys know from learning Chabad Hasidus, regardless of what Hasidus you belong to, that Hasidus, the teachings of Hasidus, is a noun. This is not verbs. This is deep stuff. Yesh mi'ayin, ilu v'olu. What do you want to say, sir? Oh, okay. You want to say something?
Did you hear what I said?
I didn't hear. Okay, you're frozen, it looks like. Let's go on. Okay. What?
It only stays in your head that it's not Hasidus.
Right. Yeah, right. That's right. That's 100% right. But, without studying it, in other words, that was my only comment to you, is in other words, it's not to throw away the studying of it and the immersing yourself into the abundance and everything else. But the application is what's most important. You're right, of course. Okay, we're on the same page on that, I believe. Let's go. Let's go. Ish Yud V'hine. When it comes to Avodah, these great servants of God don't seem to be able to join and mix together and be together because he doesn't consider the other person's Avodah, his service, to be significant. And he doesn't consider him to be a servant of God, an Ovid. And what he does is he poo-poos. He makes cheap the other person's avodah, and therefore he despises and he humiliates the other person's good. And if he finds just a little deficiency, even in the externalities of the other person, which isn't really relevant to the essential service, he blows it up. Ooh, do you know this? This servant, this guy was davening shakal and learning. I saw this little thing. Oh, he's a faker. He's a phony fraud, like Bob Grant would always say, fake phony fraud. And he elaborates on it. He makes a big chont out of it. But he talks about it to everyone. You know this guy? You think he's such a big, special servant to learn him, Menashe? Ha ha ha! Let me tell you about that. He picks a little detail. Right? And in that detail, he's weak. And he makes from that the ikar, and he says, if so, this guy's a faker. The vaza oisai, and doing this, he embarrasses him. And surely, if he finds a no good midah, a no good emotion, attribute, character trait, in the other person, Asher ein odem tzaddik. The Rashab says right here, stop right there. There's no person that's a tzaddik. This is very important, Chevra. We look around and we see a fault in someone, and we all have faults. And the Rashab says even a tzaddik has faults. However you are to understand that. So why are you nitpicking? That's what he says here. And because of this attitude, all of the good that he sees in this fellow, he drops it. He forgets it. He says he's a nothing. And to him, his attitude is, it's naught. It's gurnished. Efes, zero. And he he heightens the bad over the good, God forbid. It's and so much so that he disqualifies the other person as though he doesn't exist. This is a person who is a davener, a learner, about midas, everything, right? Good guy. And in a certain area has a weakness. And it's a weakness. And this is also a very important lesson. I'm talking to myself. And it took years, coming from the yeshiva world, as a yeshiva bacher, it's unfortunately, in my humble opinion, today, a bad midah. It's bad. It's no good. Disqualifying others, who are not learning like you, davening like you, everything, and you find a little fault and you say, they're nothing. And the Rebbe says it's not that way. They have a fault, and they need to work on the fault. But if, by and large, the person is an exemplary person in so many areas, there's no reason to disqualify him and to humiliate him. That's what he says. Let's see. Continue. The Rebbe says, in truth, it's not this way. You hear this? The fact that he does serve God, Yoini, through davening, Voisik B'Torah, the Kiyum Mitzvahs, how is that toiv? That's good. That's the primary service of this person all day. He's involved in Torah and Tefillah. The fact that he does have a certain bad character trait, he didn't correct it yet. It quotes the pasuk, Ayar Pera Adam Yavoli. The person is born like a wild donkey, right? That's the way we're born. So what's the chiddush? What's the chiddush here that he has still a midah? He to begin with is born like a donkey, a wild donkey. So the fact that he's worked out so many issues in his life, and there's still an area too that's not worked out. Okay, focus on the good. Let's continue. The mitchilas leidayim in the sukkah. From his very beginning, his birth, he's not corrected. He's not tikkun. This is the avoid of this person throughout his life. To correct his midas. Says the days of our years are 70 years. Behem, Oisies, Behema. Behem. It says Yemesh no Seinu Behem. The words base, hey mem are alluded to the letters behema. The koyal midas rois hatimus of shabamis. It refers to the ugly midas of the animal drive. Shazeh nitin leodom shivim shona. David HaMelech says Hashem gave a person 70 years levarit azay midas rois to refine their bad 7 midas that are characters no good. And it's impossible to correct everything at one time. According to verse. A little I'll chase away. Yidl by yidl, little by little. You need a lot of effort and a lot of work to get rid of a bad midah. To the point, after doing work for years, through much avodah and davening, meditating on elikus and godliness, uvis gabrus hamidos shel hanefesh hagamis, having the midos, the character traits of the godly soul, dominate and overpower the animal drive. Machlish. One weakens, and refines, as is the natural animal traits which are unhealthy. The kasher ohevet is Hashem, when he serves Hashem, betach yevarer v'yisakim midosav, surely he'll correct the midas. Says the Rebbe, sometimes you need a friend to help you in this avodah. Kibiyatzlim, because he on his own mitzad, avasatzlim, because of his self-love. Lepon me'yedeyim amidin but he doesn't know about his own bad character, about his bad midah. But sort of chaveir loyder he needs a friend to wake him up. Ulaham tzietzes chulun, to give him advice how to get rid of this bad particular midah. And now, if he truly loves the person, likes the person, you do talk to him, but privately. That's what Hillel does. He's a therapist. It's in a private room. There's no cameras and there's no tapes. It's private. It's not just because the government says that if you divulge, you'll be fired and you'll lose your license. It's not right. But you pull him aside. I went over to someone in Rosh Hashanah, in middle of davening, whatever. I had a certain feeling, a certain thought. I put my tallis over his head, and I whispered something into his ear. Someone standing by, he says, and what about me? What about me? It's private. I had a certain message, and I felt it was for him, so whatever. So, you have to be careful. And in a private way, you talk to the other about correcting a particular behavior. And give him advice. Give him a solution. Just don't make him aware of the problem and say, you're on your own, Charlie. No, help him. If you really want to be constructive, then give him a solution. Give him an idea. And when he doesn't do that, rather he humiliates and embarrasses and lowers the person, and specifically, especially, if he does so in front of others, that's proof that he really hates his friend. That he has hate for him in his heart, and he doesn't want at all his betterment. He's not interested in that person improving himself to be a better servant of Hashem. He wants him to remain in the dungeon. He wants him to remain downtrodden. He wants him to remain despicable and with not nice midah. He thrives on seeing this guy have an ugly midah. That's what he says. The Rebbe says every person should truly want there should be service of God in the nicest way, in the best way in the world, because that's the will of God. So you should also want it. He should also want it. On the contrary, what's the reason? It's because of the lack of true avodah, true service. His service, his own service, is not truthful. Although he serves Hashem. Remember, we're talking now to people who are Ovdei Hashem, servants of God, who are involved in davening. It's not truth. It's not genuine, where the ego's completely been removed. Next page. It still has what we call Yeshus, ego of Murgashatzmai. Whatever he does, it's about him. Whatever he davens, and whatever he learns, or whatever, I did it. I. He might not say it, but that's the way it feels. So the Rebbe says in this paragraph, when we finish the paragraph, how important it is if you really are an Oved Hashem, if you really are a servant of Hashem, to try to help your friend. And this is a very important paragraph, thinking not relevant to mention names, but sometimes you find, public figures, more public figures, and we find a flaw in them. And there's a flaw. So one attitude is to disqualify them completely. Like, oh, you got to be kidding. He's the main speaker today. You got to be kidding. And you won't go, and you'll tell others not to go, and you won't listen, and you'll say he's such a bluffer, such a faker, And that's what the Rebbe is saying here. If you really love the person, which you should, because Ahavas Yisrael, then call him privately aside and Talk with him. I'll end off with what I wrote in my book, and I've shared it with you many times. Since it's a public thing, I could say the name. The last day of Reb Shlomo Carlebach's life. The last day. Right here in Borough Park. 5 blocks from where I'm sitting now. Off the corner of 13th Avenue and 47th Street. There used to be a luncheonette called Weiss's Luncheonette. At 1 o'clock or so, it's lunchtime. Place is packed with people from the businesses on 13th Avenue. They go in for lunch to buy food. And who's standing there? Yossel Slonemer, I call him. The grandson of the Slonemer Rebbe. And who comes in? Reb Shlomo Carlebach. Everyone knows when Reb Shlomo Carlebach came into a room, it was a different room. Everyone knew him. Everything lit up, in many ways. And Yossel, who's a massive Talmud Chacham, he was raised in Meir Sha'arim, okay? Came to America, married the daughter of a Rebbe in Chicago. I forget the name right now, a Rav Rebbe, and did well in business, whatever. So Shlomo, I don't know if he knew him before. I don't think he sticks out his hand to give him Shalom Aleichem, and he pulls his hand away. So Shlomo says, "Why aren't you shaking my hand?" He says to him with a very stern face, and you remember, everyone's online, the place is packed. All of a sudden, it becomes quiet. He says, you know why. You know why. So Shlomo was no fool. He was a very smart man. So he says to him, and if I do tshuva now, will you shake my hand? Oh, Yossel quoted a pasuk in Mishlei, I forget where, or Koheles, a very, very, a pasuk that calls a person, Hashem calls a person a Rasha, okay? I don't want to repeat it, it's Naseres Yemei Tshuva, it's not the time for it. So Shlomo says to Yossel, in other words, Shlomo's a massive Talmud Chacham, Yossel's these are 2 Talmidei Chachamim, okay? These are people who learned big time. And he says to him, and if I do tshuva, will you shake my hand? He says, absolutely. So he says to him, I'm doing tshuva now. Shlomo says that. 1 o'clock on the same day that at 6 o'clock he went on a plane to go to Toronto, I think from LaGuardia, and he had his heart attack and he died. That afternoon, Maise Shehoya Kach Hoya. What gives me the right to say it? Because Yossel told me this 2 or 3 times, and I didn't trust him. And he said, you could check with someone else who was in the store, and I did. And I called him, someone else who lives in Borough Park, and he said, it's exactly what happened. I was in the store. I saw it, and I heard it. What am I going to say? That, that's what the Rebbe is calling for here. And you should know the Lubavitcher Rebbe's attitude was this attitude. Even though he had tainas of Shlomo for certain things, v'chulu, but it didn't take away from the Nekud Klolis. In other words, a person can always do tshuva. And what the Rashab is teaching us is, if something is wrong, you pull them aside, you talk privately, and you go from there. You know what I'm saying? And that's a very important message, especially today, where people just get all worked up and upset and belittle, besmirch, and disgrace others. And it's a hard avodah. It's a very difficult avodah if you're coming from a certain paradigm where this was the modus operandi as you grew up in the yeshiva world, to change that way of thinking. This is very difficult. I'm telling you from personal experience. Okay, it's not easy. In a way, the whole yeshiva world and Hasidus world and Litvish world works in this way, unfortunately. And the Alter Rebbe and the Rebbe and other Gedolei Yisrael work on implementing that this is not the way it should be, even though you have disagreements, okay? Even though you have disagreements. And again, if something, that's the same thing I said about the Erev Isser. If something is not right, it's not right. But that doesn't mean it's a reason for hatred. And it's a reason for humility, for humiliation, and a reason for disgrace. Chevra, we're going to learn tomorrow. Have a great day. Sei gesund. Shalom.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great class.
Thank you. Bye-bye.